Hello, everybody, and welcome to I Hate Your Taste in Movies. This is a movie podcast where we force our friends to watch movies that we love and have them rip them apart. My name is Jackie.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Austin.
And today we are talking about Jenn's movie. Jen, would you like to tell us what we're looking at?
We are talking about one of my all-time favorite movies of all time, Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm glad you appreciated that, Jackie.
The double mention was pretty great.
All the time.
She's not messing around.
Just in case you guys weren't sure how much I love this movie, I'm literally wearing a Freddy t-shirt right now. Like,
she is.
You should understand. But yeah, so this movie is one that I saw when I was very young. I was a kid, basically, who shouldn't have been watching horror movies, but for some reason was. And it genuinely scared the shit out of my 7-year-old self. I had nightmares for years. I was terrified. And then when I was a little older, maybe like a preteen or a teenager, I watched it again and was able to kind of get over my fear in that way and really enjoy it for what it was. And then since then, I've seen all of the sequels, the documentary about it. I've seen Robert Englund, who plays Freddy at conventions. I've met Heather Langenkamp, who plays Nancy. This is just a huge part of my I don't know, self. This is a very formative experience in Jen, the little horror fan. So I was excited to force you guys to watch it.
Well, I went into this movie feeling pretty scared because I hate horror movies, as Austin and Jen know, and it usually takes a lot of persuasion to get me to watch one. But I knew who Freddy Krueger was. I feel like he's quite well known in the world, in pop culture. So I thought I knew what I was getting into, but I really, really did not. So I'll just tell you my little blurb about what I thought the movie was about.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what you and Austin thought, because this is kind of a well-known pop culture touchstone, but maybe not.
I thought I had it nailed, and I think I did a pretty good job. I wrote, Demon Freddy Krueger kills sexy teens by going inside their dreams. If you die in a dream, you die in real life, ?
That's the movie in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Right?
Austin,
what about you, Austin?
Yeah, I went in knowing surprisingly little as well. I don't really know how I had missed this movie, but I had somehow. My guess for the movie plot is not that exciting. It's pretty standard. I wrote, a group of teenagers are haunted and terrorized by Freddy Krueger in their dreams. They get killed in increasingly gross ways, and Johnny Depp is there.
Yeah.
I had no idea Johnny Depp was in this movie. And for the first 10 minutes, I didn't know which character was Johnny Depp. It really, I was like, is that Johnny Depp? Is that Johnny Depp? Is that garbage can Johnny Depp? Is that girl skipping Johnny Depp? I couldn't recognize him at all. He must have had some plastic surgery since.
I think so.
I'd
forgotten that this was his his first movie. I think that was stored somewhere up there in the trivia, but yeah, I had forgotten about it. So Jen, do you want to run us through a basic synopsis before we get to our thoughts?
So for anyone who does not know, for whatever reason, Nightmare on Elm Street follows a group of teenagers in the, I believe, fictional town of Springwood. They begin to have nightmares about a man with burns on his face, a striped sweater, and claws on a glove on his hand, kind of knives for fingers is I think how they describe him. They start having these nightmares, they get injured, they wake up with the injuries, and then they start dying in the dreams and in real life as well. And Nancy Thompson, who's our protagonist, she sort of realizes she has to figure out who this man is, why he's coming in their dreams for them, and discovers that he was a child murderer in the town who was killed vigilante style by their parents, and now he is coming back for revenge in their dreams.
But they never really explain how that happens. He's a ghost? He's a dream ghost? Was he asleep when they killed him? Was he dreaming when they killed him?
That was my main question, is I felt really stupid for not really understanding. And maybe we're not really supposed to understand. I don't know what the legacy. I haven't seen any of these movies. I haven't seen any of the sequels. But yeah, I wasn't sure, what is Freddy? Is he a ghost? Is he real? Can you kill him? Can you kill him again? I don't understand.
So after watching this for the podcast, I went and watched all of them because I own the Nightmare on Elm Street box set of all the sequels and everything. So I was like, well, this is a fun quarantine project. I'm going to rewatch the whole series. So they don't really get into that until later on in the series. They kind of posit some theories of how he's able to do this. I don't think it's necessarily important. Basically, what the sequels kind of explain is that as he's dying, sort of like demonic entities offer him this ability to live forever by killing teenagers and collecting their souls.
Okay.
A lot of that, like I said, that doesn't really matter. That doesn't really affect what's happening in this movie. It doesn't, like, his motivation is just that he wants to kill teenagers. Like, you don't really need to know that he's got demonic powers. You know what I mean?
Right. I will say I rewatched this again this morning because when I watched it initially, it was probably about a month ago now. So I rewatched it. Started my day 8 a.m. watching Nightmare on Elm Street, but
I love it.
I liked it a lot more the second time around, and I do feel like I picked up more of kind of his mythology a little bit, just in terms of like I was confused the first time around when she's like in that sleep clinic and then she like wakes up and she has his hat. And I was like, what? And so I didn't really understand her plan to kind of bring him into the real world the first time around, but got it more the second time.
Yeah, I just watched it once, literally yesterday, because I've been avoiding this. I really thought that I would be so scared and nightmares would ensue. I really was sure this was going to be hard. So I watched it in daylight and ready to cover my eyes. We'll get into more about the movie, but yes, I was left with many, many questions as well. The whole movie, basically, I had a big old like, huh? What? When? Like, I couldn't tell sometimes when they were in a dream and when they weren't, and how you can wake up sometimes with an alarm clock, but sometimes not, with people like shaking you. So first impression I got while watching this was, hey, is like Rod a straight up rapist?
Right?
He was brutal. He was super mean to her and aggressive and basically like pulled her into the house and she's like, do not leave me alone with this guy. And her friends just, haha, oh Rod, silly rapist Rod.
That was one of the things I really wanted to talk about too, was just how awful really all of the male characters are in this movie, but especially Rod. Oh my gosh, he was bad.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I mean, I've watched this so many times that it's kind of good to hear it from your guys' fresh eyes and see what you took out of it. Because I'm like, Rod, why would you think Rob was oh, right, that part.
Well, and I didn't
You know what I mean?
I didn't even get the sense that he was like joking. Like he seemed legitimately psychotic. And yeah, the fact that she was like, don't leave me alone with this lunatic. Like, I guess she was joking, but it kind of seemed sincere at the same time.
Yeah, he literally picked her up and dragged her after she said, no, go away, leave my house.
Yeah.
And at that moment, too, I was like, I had thought up until this point that Tina was the main character.
So did I.
Because she had the dream first. And I was like, oh, Dancy's her sidekick. But when she had sex with Rod, I'm like, oh, she's gone. Goodbye, Tina.
I literally have that exact note. I said, uh-oh, sex equals death. I thought that she was the main character, but she had sex, so I guess not.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, she had sex, so she's dead meat, question mark? And also, man, how rude is it to have super loud sex with your friends literally next room over?
Yeah, it's weird. For a different time, I guess.
I thought maybe they were also setting it up in that way that movies do, where they make a character pretty despicable so that you do not mind when they're murdered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there was definitely an element of that. Jen, I wanted to ask you, I don't know too much about the timeline of this movie, but where does Nightmare on Elm Street kind of fall in the sort of slasher film timeline in terms of, like, we've talked about the sex equals death, like that's such a trope that was developed in these slasher movies. Was this one of the first ones that did it, or was it? I know this is after Halloween and after a lot of those, but still.
Yeah, we're still very early in the slasher genre, so I think late 70s is kind of when it started. This movie's 1984, so it's still very much at the beginning. And it's also, so it is responsible for making a lot of these tropes, but it's also one that it's sort of, I don't know, I find it very definitive. So the director / writer, Wes Craven, is like a horror icon. He's done a lot of the big ones, like Last House on the Left, Hills Have Eyes, Scream later on. Yeah. And you can see a lot of the tropes from this in those later films. As I was rewatching it, I was actually making note of all the different ways it reminds me of Scream. One of them is like how you guys mentioned, how you think Tina's the main character at first until she gets brutally murdered, much like Drew Barrymore at the beginning of Scream.
Oh, true. So I didn't even make that connection.
That's kind of a trope that like Wes Craven started and then did again 20 years later.
That's funny because I was thinking of Scream the whole time. Like the whole time I was like, oh, that's what they make fun of in Scream. And then I totally didn't make the connection that Wes Craven did Scream. So that's really funny.
I forgot that Scream was a movie, but yeah, now that you say it, it all makes sense. But I will say that this movie, I expected it to be really formulaic and obvious, and it surprised me a couple times, which I respected that. I really enjoyed that.
I think I was
Yeah.
expecting it to be a lot campier than it was. Like, it's still pretty campy, but it's a good movie. Like, it's fun. And there's some good scares in it, I thought.
Yeah, I think of the classic slashers, Friday the 13th, Halloween, and Nightmare on Elm Street,
Mhm.
everyone has one series that like is theirs, is the one that they love. For me, it's obviously Nightmare on Elm Street. And I think it's because it is just a lot more inventive. I think Halloween is pretty straightforward. Guy with a mask stabbing a bunch of teenagers. Friday the 13th, other than the first one, pretty straightforward. Jason mask stabbing a bunch of teenagers. But this one is just so much more, I don't know, involved. It's a bigger concept of going into the dreams. And then, especially later in the sequels, Freddy himself, he becomes a lot more, I guess, campy. He makes a lot of like puns and one liners as he's killing people. But he also like toys with his victims. He starts killing them in ways related to them and their personalities. And it's just a lot more involved in that way. So I just find it, of the classic slashers, it is the creme de la creme.
And it's funny, yeah, because I've seen Halloween and I've seen Friday the 13th, and I really like Halloween. I didn't like Friday the 13th very much, but yeah, this one was really fun.
I will say I liked a lot that the concept is so big, you can do anything. Literally, there's no rules. Dreams mean that any possible thing you can imagine can happen, which I really like because even normally I'm like, this is not real. Physics exist. Why is this happening? Why is she running so slow and he's catching up? But that's classic dream, like classic
Yeah.
dream that you run slow and the guy catches you.
Right? Like when the staircase is melting and stuff and she can't get up the stairs.
Yeah. Oh, that was
Yeah.
so good. I never usually have this feeling where I'm so happy that I accept everything because usually I'm like, that's not real. That's not real. Why are you making this stupid choice? But in this, you just have to believe it because it's dream world and you make stupid choices in dream world. And that made this movie way more enjoyable for me because there's no limits and you don't have to try and make your brain accept it because we've all had dreams like this.
That's a really good point.
Like you said earlier too, where it's like you don't know what's dream and what's real. Like I think that's good too, because sometimes in scenes you would think they're already awake and then realize they're not yet awake and that's still part of the dream. So it kind of keeps you on your toes a bit more, I guess.
Yeah, you never really feel super relaxed, even though the movie itself, because I think mostly because it's dated, it wasn't really scary to me. Obviously, it's really late in the game for me to be watching it, but I was never on sure footing. Everything could have been a dream. So
Yeah.
he could pop out at any moment, which is surprising if not scary.
Yeah, so that's actually something I wanted to ask you guys because I saw this for the first time, as I said, when I was a young child. I was maybe 6 or 7. And the scene in particular with Tina's body bag in the hallway of the
Yeah.
school
Whoa.
scared the ever-loving fuck out of me. And even now as an adult watching it, like it doesn't scare me anymore, but I'm like, that's such a well-done scene. It's so creepy.
disturbing. It's really
So that's
disturbing.
why I wanted to ask, like, did anything in the movie scare you? And if anything did, was it that scene? Because that scene is creepy as fuck.
So I had 2 scares that I liked a lot. That was one of them. I don't think it scared me in the sense of, like, it wasn't a jump scare, because I don't like jump scares. That was like an extended, just disturbing visual. So that definitely freaked me out. And then the other one was near the beginning, when Nancy is in bed and, like, Freddy comes through the wall above her bed and then
Ooh.
retreats. I wasn't expecting that, and that was
Cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. So those were the 2 scares for me.
Yeah, I definitely was creeped out by Body Bag Tina. Again, you weren't sure right away if she was dreaming or not because she just was in class and had that like nod moment. And so I wasn't ready for a scare. I thought she was going to talk to the teacher or something, but then all of a sudden Body Bag Tina is there. And then she's being dragged by an invisible force.
Mhm.
So
That
good.
freaked me out. The other thing that freaked me out, well, there's 2 more things that freaked me out. One was phone tongue.
Oh, yeah.
Can we just talk about how unexpected that was? I literally dropped my pen.
I feel like that was like one of the few things I had seen before from this movie. I think I'd seen that and I'd seen Johnny Depp's death before, just like in passing. So I knew that was coming, but I forgot about it. So it still got me the first time.
The other thing that kind of creeped me out more than scared me was the bathtub scene. All of it.
Yeah.
The camera angle, I was like, what is happening? And the claw coming out, I was like, God damn it. he's going to cut her bad. But then after that, she's sucked like under the ice sort of visual. Really freaked me out. I've had that dream before. Very uncomfortable. But then the way she got out of it is one of the problems I have with this movie, where sometimes they can wake themselves up, sometimes they can't. And I just wanted more clear rules. Like, do you need an external force to wake you up? Is that her mom banging on the door? And how come Tina couldn't wake up during her giant exorcist throw around sesh? In general, that made me very uncomfortable. The whole bathtub bit.
Yeah, I do agree that there's a bit of internal logic with the dreams that isn't quite fleshed out yet, of like, when can they wake up and when can they not wake up. Like, Nancy sort of really expects that Glenn will be able to wake her up and pull her out of the dream a few times, but it's not really sure yet if that will wake you up.
Yeah, what is she basing that off of, kind of thing?
Yeah, like, Tina obviously didn't wake up, even though she was getting slaughtered, like, brutally.
Like, she burns her arm to wake herself up in the movie, so why wouldn't slicing pain wake you up?
Yeah, so the only thing I can kind of think that would make sense is maybe Nancy has had nightmares in the past, not Freddy related necessarily, where she has been able to wake herself up, so she knows she's able to do that. So, for example, I am able to do that. I have whatever it's called, like lucid dreaming, where I'm aware that I'm dreaming and I can wake myself up if I need to.
Cool.
So it's annoying because I used to believe that if I dreamt about a bug, it was my subconscious telling me that there was a bug crawling in my bed and I could feel it. So if I ever dreamt that I saw a spider, I would wake up and look around to see where the spider was. Really annoying. So it would be like 4 a.m. and there was never a spider. It was always just in my dream, but I was convinced it was on my bed in real life. So, like, in theory, then if I had a Freddy dream, I would be like, okay, I need to wake myself up now.
Interesting.
I have the opposite, where I'm so in my dream, I never have ever once realized I'm dreaming. Never. I could never wake myself up. I'd be dead immediately.
I feel like I've had it both ways. There's definitely been times where I remember having the specific thought of, like, this is a dream, and being like, I need to wake up. But, like, I don't know if that actually translated to me being able to wake up. But I feel like I've had that moment in a dream of, like, this isn't real. But then I've also been so into a dream that, yeah, I'm not waking up anytime kind of thing.
Yeah, have you ever had it where you've, like, changed the course of your dream? Because I remember, like, if I saw something, like, for some reason, I would have dreams about, like, creepy dolls. So if ever I saw a doll in a dream, I'd be like, oh, this is going into nightmare territory. Don't like that. And I would kind of, like, in my dream, like, turn it towards something else that the doll would just not be a part of the dream anymore.
Your brain is so scary. I am afraid of the things you are describing right now. This is deeply upsetting. My dreams are generally, like, so happy, and I'm, like, planning out a plan and accomplishing my goals, and that's it.
I mean, these are anomalies. I can tell you about a less scary dream I had recently. Austin might appreciate this, but I dreamt that I was playing Christine in Phantom of the Opera, and I was on the press tour. And at some point in the dream, in my brain, I was like, I'm not a soprano. How am I playing Christine?
That's amazing.
That's your anxiety dream, is you have to star in Phantom of the Opera. I love it. I love that it's not small. My anxiety dreams are always like, I think my teeth are loose.
Oh my gosh, I have that dream all the time. That's my biggest recurring dream, is my teeth are loose or they're falling out. It's a stress dream. But
yeah, it sucks. I have the one where I bite down really hard because I'm stressed and I'm, like, gritting my teeth and then they all shoot back inside my gums.
Ooh, I haven't had that one.
That's messed up.
So bad. This is just devolving into a talk about dreams. This is a dream podcast where we tell you about our dreams.
Circling back to Nightmare on Elm Street.
Right.
I would love to talk about Johnny Depp's death scene.
Yikes.
It is one of my favorite scenes in all movies. I love it so much. The second it cuts to him in his bedroom in that little crop top and I know it's coming, I'm like, yes!
The crop top should be the star of this movie. Because at first he's sitting, you don't realize he's wearing it, and then he stands up and you're like, damn, crop. But also I was like, Glenn, you deserve this. You fell asleep so many times.
Before we talk about his death, can we back up and talk about how useless he's been this entire time?
Yeah, seriously, she asks for a couple favors and he can't do any of them, and they're literally
the favors are like, don't go to sleep until midnight,
and then meet me later so that you can make sure I wake up from my dream where people die. Like, maybe it is her fault for not being able to explain to him enough what's actually going on, because he clearly doesn't believe that he's in danger.
Mm-hmm.
He's so casual. He's like, I'm going to listen to records and watch the television, chill out in my crop top. So, I mean, it is pretty hard to convince someone that this is actually happening because she does seem insane, but you figure they could have talked about it a little bit longer. She could have convinced him how important it was. Given him a caffeine tablet or two, maybe.
He is sleepy.
This is also why Nancy is one of my favorite, like, final girls in horror movies, because she was also one of the first where she's 100% on her own. Like, the men in her life are not helping her. Glenn doesn't believe her. Her dad doesn't believe her. She's like, I gotta finish Freddy off. I gotta fight him. I have to do this. The rest of you suck. You're slowing me down. I'm gonna survive. She even says one of my favorite quotes when she's talking to Glenn, and she's like, I'm into survival. Like, I'm not letting him stop me. I'm gonna fucking win. And I'm like, yeah, you are. Debatable, depending on the ending. But, you know, the men suck in this movie. Glenn is absolutely useless. Her dad is kind of absent for the most part, and then when he shows up, he's not very helpful.
Right.
Rod,
Totally
helpfully pointed out, is possibly a rapist.
And then even that cop the dad is like, watch my house. If anything seems weird, come get me. And then she's smashing windows, screaming for help, and the cop assigned to watch is just kind of like, she seems good. She seems fine. It takes about 5 to 8 more minutes when the house is on fire for them to decide to come help her.
Yeah.
So another useless man, which, you know, now that you pointed out, I enjoyed that.
It's true. It's a really good point. I feel like with her dad, I was getting so frustrated because she was like, aside from the fact that like all of her friends have died, these like very dramatic deaths, and she found the body of Tina and all this, and it's like, oh, she's just a little worked up. She just needs to sleep and all this. And it's like, maybe the dad could like give a shit. I don't know. Yeah. He was just like,
he's
it's fine.
A terrible dad.
Just go to sleep. It's fine. And she's like, please wake me up in 20 minutes.
Don't worry your pretty little head, little girl.
Yeah.
There's no serial killer who's killing your friends, except even if you don't believe it's a dream serial killer, clearly someone is killing her friends.
Yeah.
So maybe be concerned about her. Although we totally kind of veered away from Glenn's death scene.
Sorry.
Actually, before we get back to that, I want to finish on what you were saying about like the parents, because I like that how it's sort of like on the literal level, the kids are being haunted by Freddy because their parents fucked up and murdered him. But then they're also being hindered by the fact that their parents are so absent and shitty in real life. Like Tina's mom's not around. Nancy's mom's a drunk. Her dad's absent. It's kind of just saying like on both levels, these kids are being fucked over by their parents.
I did appreciate, at least on surface level, that her mom like was like, I'm gonna get her help, and she like brought her to a sleep clinic. I don't know how much sleep clinic would actually help with something like this, but or like with dreams and stuff, but I appreciated that she at least at first made an effort to try to get her help, and then was like trying to comfort her to be like, we did this, I did this, he's not gonna get you. I respected that, but yeah, she was ultimately useless because then she locked her in her house, so that's not great.
That very much surprised me. I thought there's not a situation where you lock from the inside with a key to trap your person inside. Like, it obviously never occurred to her that fire exists because you need a way out of a house. But can we also talk about the sleep clinic where the mom's allowed to stay all night and smoke in the sleep clinic, and for some reason they tape an electrode to Nancy's chin? I was so confused about all of the things happening at the sleep clinic, which I kind of love, because seeing how the medical field is represented in the 80s movies is always so funny and amazing. Yeah. He's like, look at this number. If she's dreaming, it'll be a 5. It's like, what number? What is this number? What is it measuring? Nothing? Great. Cool. Thanks. Thanks, doctor.
I liked that scene because when she started having the nightmare, like, we didn't see her nightmare. Like, we saw it from the parents and the doctor's perspective.
Yeah, so you're like thrashing about.
Yeah. So Glenn's death. Sorry, Jen.
Now we can get back to Glenn's death, which is, again, my absolute favorite, just because it's so ridiculous. Like, he gets sucked into the bed, and then it shoots out, like, 57 gallons of blood. Like, more blood than would exist in one teenage boy. And then it's, like, all the cops and the coroner are all, like, vomiting. Like, I've never seen something so disturbing in my life. And I'm, like, howling. I love it. It's so funny.
It was really funny. At first, though, the blood it looked brown to me. So I wasn't sure. I'm like, is this blood? Is it dream sewage? What are we looking at? And then I didn't understand. I wish obviously they didn't show his body on purpose to make the joke about how disgusting it was work, or what I consider to be a joke. But I was confused about where he was, because blood was coming through the floor. So was he under the bed? Was he in the floor? I thought, to me, being sucked in the bed was like another dimension or something. But clearly he's somewhere between the ceiling of the room below and his bed. So I wanted to know what happened to him.
So the way I always saw it was that he's sucked into the bed and, like you said, kind of into a dream dimension, but the blood is spewing back out. So it's like Freddy brought him in and is eviscerating him in such a way that his blood is gushing back into the real world.
Okay, and then his body comes back into the real world in pieces or something.
I could probably assume it's like under the bed or something, right? There's got to be a body.
I do kind of like, again, I know it's A, 1984, and B, like, not every movie's gonna be the way I think it should, but like the fact that it's just pure blood, like there's no viscera, no body parts, like you're not seeing like intestines or anything coming through. I kind of wish it had been a little gorier like that. I know that is the opposite of what you guys want in movies, but I need to see some body parts.
This was the prime level of gore for me.
Yeah, so fake that it's not scary.
Yeah, I loved it. Even Tina's super bloody death scene I could watch, which is not always the case. I'm into that.
I'd actually like to talk about that scene at some point, because that was another kind of scary scene. Or
go for it.
Well, just that it was intense. It was kind of scary. But then Rod again pissed me off, because I'm like, you could try to save her.
Totally. The first thing he does is get out of bed and like back away from the bed. I expected him to run out of the room. I'm like, that's Rod's character.
Right.
Beat it.
And then he says something about I was screaming like crazy or something. And I'm like, no, you were not. You said, who killed you or who did this or something. He said, he screamed like once.
Yeah, and I think it wasn't a scream. Minutes to scream. Like at first she's being like bloody tossed around the ceiling and he's kind of just like, what? And then after she's dead, basically, he's just like, what happens?
It's so strange. It was so weird. And then I will say, whenever Nancy came in and found her body, right? Or kind of saw the scenario, she didn't exactly react the way I would react if I came into a room and found a dead body of one of my best friends, but okay.
Well, that's Nancy, though. Every death, she just kind of stares at it with her mouth open.
Dude.
Actually, her mouth is open the entire movie. I noticed that. I was like, mouth breather. Shut it. Shut your trap. But
I just wanted to mention how useless Rod was. I also did appreciate that she got like swung around and knocked him over. That was fun.
That was hilarious. I was so happy that happened. But it made me wonder, the whole being tossed around the room made me wonder about, again, the logistics of dream versus what's happening to your body in real life. Because if in the dream, say Freddy threw her 20 feet, but her body is in a bed in a room that's like 10 feet wide, would her body go outside the house? Would it go through the wall, or would it just slam really hard into the wall? And in the dream, would she then hit an imaginary wall and fall?
Oh, interesting.
Like, I wanted to compare what was actually happening and what we would see.
So I don't want to get too into the sequels, because like I said, I don't think that necessarily affects what happens in this movie, but I will say in one of the later sequels, there's a scene where someone in their dream is walking up a flight of stairs, and in the real world, there are no stairs, so they're kind of just walking up nothing. Like, they're still going up, but there's no stairs there. So they are able to kind of do things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do.
That's kind of cool. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
One other thing I loved about this movie, and it brought me an incredible amount of joy while I was watching, was that when the chase scene happened, there was incredible like 80s synth rock with like laser sounds. Every time she's running, it was like, and I couldn't stop laughing. I was so enjoying that.
The music was fantastic. I really liked it.
Okay, so there are several sequels to this movie. The third one is called Dream Warriors. It's my favorite of the sequels. That one has a theme song sung by like an 80s hair band called Dream Warriors. I highly recommend you, A, watch that movie because it's delightful. B, listen to that song. It's so good.
Amazing.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
Is it at all similar to when the Lost Boys had that naked saxophone playing guy? Like, is the band in the movie by any chance?
No, not
Oh,
quite
okay.
like that. But the music video for that song is like the band in a dream world with like clips of the movie and like Freddie and stuff. So you can just watch that.
Okay, that sounds great. That's all I want to
But,
see.
but I also do recommend Dream Warriors. It's very good.
I have to say there's a chance I may watch more of these movies.
Okay, so let me walk you through all the sequels then. This is what I've been waiting for,
Actually,
guys.
I have something else. I don't have anything else. I just wanted to redirect.
I'll say something. I really liked the sound effects, I guess, in general. Like there was that ticking clock that kept going at one point. And just like I thought the sound effects in general were really good. The whispering and the kind of the children's nursery rhymes and stuff. It was very atmospheric, and I thought that it worked, and it was genuinely creepy. And then the synth music was just fun.
Amazing.
It suited it, and it was great.
Those kids, again, really confused me because I couldn't tell if they were real or not. And I couldn't believe they were real, all dressed in white dresses singing this song. But yet then they're, driving to school in the morning and they're right there. So it was confusing. I couldn't tell what was happening, but their little creepy voices are super creepy.
So I guess this is one question that I have. Maybe Jen knows the answer. I kind of got the sense initially that Freddy Krueger was this like myth that people knew about. Like they had the 1-2 Freddy's coming for you. Like they had the whole nursery rhyme thing. And so I kind of got the sense that it was something that was known, but then I guess it didn't turn out that it was. So and then he was a real person. So I guess I was a little confused about that. Because initially I, like when they were like first getting to school and talking about their nightmares and stuff, I had just gotten the sense that it was kind of something that had been around their childhoods, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's actually something I was going to mention too, because like at certain points Nancy knows the rhyme, but she doesn't know the story of Freddy Krueger. So it's kind of like he has become this urban legend in the town. Like the kids know the rhyme of like 1-2 Freddy's coming for you, but they don't necessarily know the story of Fred Krueger, the child murderer who was murdered. So it's kind of, I think too, like that you kind of don't necessarily know the timeline, because Nancy and her friends had to have been young enough that they wouldn't have picked up on this story happening, that they wouldn't have known this name. And just to give an example, I was about 6 or 7 in St. Catharines when Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka were a thing. I knew them. Like, I knew those names. I knew what was going on. So you'd have to be pretty young to not pick up on a child murderer in your town. So then I think that might say that Nancy and her friends were maybe babies at the time, toddlers, and then it kind of was something passed down from older kids. So then they're aware of the rhyme, but they don't know that there's a real story behind it. But I do think
that makes sense.
Interesting if there was kind of that urban legend aspect to it. If someone was like, oh, I think I dreamt about like Freddy Krueger, and they're like, oh, what, him? That like nursery rhyme creep guy?
Right. So the nursery rhyme was actually more about the human being, Fred Krueger, whereas I think I initially thought that it was more about the dream killer.
Yeah, because I think the lyrics are dream based, but
right,
like I said, because the kids know it, it has to somehow be connected to the real world,
to the real person.
Jen, do you know it? Do you know the whole song? I don't want you to sing it, but
Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. 5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8, gotta stay up late. 9, 10, never sleep again.
Because I wasn't sure what parts of it were actually referencing dreaming, but obviously the later bits were. Cool. Also, well done. Incredible performance by Jen.
Yeah, you ask if I know these words. Like, what?
Stupid question.
I only knew the first, 4, so...
Side note, I'm doing a Buffy rewatch right now, and I recently passed Hush, and I forgot that episode starts with Buffy having a dream where there's a little girl in the hallway of her school singing a nursery rhyme about the gentleman, and I was
can't even shout, can't even cry, the gentlemen are coming by, looking in windows, knocking on doors, they're gonna take 7 and they might take yours. Also, I'm currently wearing my Buffy t-shirt.
But I was like, okay, what kind of 1-2 Freddy's coming for you thing did Hush just steal right there? It's literally in a dream, little girl, children singing the rhyme about the monster. I'm like, okay, I see you guys.
Yeah, it could have been a boy. You could have done a lot of different things there. It didn't have to be so spot on.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Can we talk about what turned out to be my favorite part of the movie, I think, is when this movie becomes Home Alone?
I literally wrote that down. I wanted to talk about that because as a rewatch, I was sort of like, wait a minute, her plan to beat Freddy is Home Alone traps? Obviously, this is
Completely.
pre-Home Alone, so clearly Home Alone is actually using Nightmare on Elm Street traps.
Yes.
Yes. Distinction noted. I loved it. The entire montage of her setting traps is one of my favorite things to watch in a movie. The only problem I had with it, and I'll keep coming back to it, is the logistical inconsistency of her doing this in 10 minutes and
Yeah.
putting her mom to bed. I was like, dude, your dad's supposed to be knocking down the door any second, and you still have to fall asleep, get into a dream, fight Freddy, and pull him out. So,
I did have that moment of thinking she was awful confident that she'd be able to fall asleep immediately, but then I guess she had been awake for a week, so I suppose so.
which is ridiculous also, and
I
physically
did. So I fact
not gonna
checked
happen.
this movie. Because there's the part where she was like, "Don't worry, I've already looked it up. The record's 11 days or something to stay awake without falling asleep." So I fact checked that, and the record is in fact 11 days.
There you go.
But like, let's talk honestly. Nancy, I don't think she's ready to match that record. I don't think she's in the military or whatever, like the guy who got the 11 days is. It's just 7 days is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming she's had little naps here and there, and
Yeah,
I actually really loved when she pulled the coffee machine out from under her bed. I was like, I like Nancy.
yeah,
I definitely-
character.
Yeah, she really grew on me, because at first I just ignored her because I assumed she was the sidekick. But then she really became a badass. I respected her.
Yeah. So, what did you guys make of the ending? Like there's sort of the first ending where she does her traps. She realizes that she needs to turn her back on Freddy and not give him any power and fear him anymore. He kind of disappears into glitter. And then later, she's outside at her front door. The sun is shining. Her mom is awake and alive and sober, and her friends are all there. And then the car turns into a Freddy car, and Freddy steals her mom back through the front door window. So, what did you think of those two endings?
I had no idea what to make of it, to be totally honest. My note is, what the fuck is this ending? I feel real stupid. Because I felt like I was supposed to understand, and I didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I figured as soon as she walked out the door and it was like overly bright, like way too saturated and all that, I was like, well, this doesn't seem real. So I kind of assumed that it wasn't actually happening. But then when the Freddy car took over, I was like, oh, maybe it is actually happening. So I don't know.
I bought it. It was a little irritating because I thought when she came out and it's sunny and her and her mom are talking, I thought it was over and they were back to real life. And I was a little irritated that they didn't show how the mom came back and how they explained everything and how they repaired everything. And I was annoyed. I'm like, where's the explanation of the steps that led to this point? And then her friends were in the car. And then I started thinking, oh, was everything that happened in this movie her dream? And it never actually happened. It was all one long dream. Then the car became a Freddy car, which was really funny. The red and green striped awning thing, I really enjoyed that. And then it drove away, and I was kind of just, my mouth was hung open. I was like, wait, what? This movie doesn't have an ending? And then her mom got sucked in the window, and I started laughing. That scene of her being dragged through the window was so funny, because it's so clearly a dummy going through a very small opening. So I ended the movie laughing, and I enjoyed it. Like, that made me very happy. But then it quickly turned into, wait, so is it over? Did they win? Did they lose? What happened? Yeah. So basically, I enjoyed it. I like what they did, but it completely doesn't make sense and has no resolution. So that is irritating.
So essentially, Wes Craven wanted this to be a standalone film. He didn't want there to ever be any sequels. So he wrote it with the sort of the first part of the ending where Nancy turns her back on Freddy and wins. And that was kind of his idea of how it was going to end. That's how she defeats Freddy. And yes, her friends are dead. Yes, her mom is dead, but she survived. And then the studio was sort of like, we would like 1 million sequels, please. We like money. So they kind of had him add this extra ending where it turns out that, you know, she maybe didn't really defeat him. He came back the next night in her next dream, or maybe defeating him was part of the dream, and now this is just the next part of the dream. You don't really know necessarily how, but he's back somehow. He's still in the dreams, and I do like that better. I know that that's maybe just me as a viewer. Like, obviously, there's a lot of meaning and power towards the fact that she would be able to face her fears and defeat it. But I just love a dark ending. I love that you can't beat Freddy, and I love that there's so many different sequels and they try to defeat him in so many different ways, and you just can't because it's in your dreams. Like, you can't do that. Like, you can't kill a guy who's already dead.
Yeah, that's true. And I thought it was a kind of a cool idea that she could bring him out of the dream and then kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought into that 100% because she did bring the hat back, and it was a physical thing that you could touch and rip apart if you wanted to. It would no longer be a hat. So it makes sense to me that she would kill him in the house. But like, I was into that. I bought it fully, and then it all fell apart. So I felt kind of tricked. And I now that you say it, I see very clearly that the ending where it should have been, and then the studio tacked on something, and that makes me even more irritated. Because
I read that they filmed like 4 different versions of the ending or something, where there was kind of the happy ending that Wes Craven wanted, and then there was the studio version that they wanted. I'm not sure if that's the version that they ended up putting in the movie, but then they filmed a couple of like kind of compromise endings.
So the mom did die. Is that what we're...
Yes.
She got sucked into the bed and died?
Yes.
Because again, thanks, Nancy, for no reaction to that.
Right.
She literally sees her mother getting sucked into a blue light demon dimension as a burned corpse. And she's just like, I need a minute.
I mean, at that point, you're kind of just like, is this really happening? Like, am I dreaming again? I don't even know anymore.
That's true.
Like, if you're Nancy, you're
losing
just
track
like,
of...
Yeah.
I just couldn't get over how terrible her father was in that end scene. She had a plan, and she asked him to come, and he just didn't. He delegated it to some idiot. The house is literally burning down around her, and they don't even notice. But I can see too how much that makes me like Nancy, because she's still friggin' fighting him off and kicking his ass, really. He falls down the stairs, blows up, catches on fire, all these things. But I was hoping she was going to use the knife glove on him, because she went to the furnace to get the real knife glove and it wasn't there. So when she grabbed the bag, I was like, oh, it's going to be a knife glove fight. And I thought they would be like ching, 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 but it just didn't happen.
That would have been amazing. Nancy puts on the glove and they just go to town on each other.
I also thought Freddy Krueger had 2 knife gloves. I didn't realize he only had 1.
Nope, just the one.
In my mind, it's scarier for him to have 2. But I guess he also needs to grab things.
It's like Michael Jackson style with the one glove.
Yeah.
Is that the inspiration?
I don't think so.
I am now believing that it was the inspiration.
So what
Freddy Krueger based on Michael Jackson.
What do you guys think of Freddy Krueger? Like, I was, what was I going to say? I liked that he was a mix of funny and scary. Like, I know, Jen, you said that he becomes a lot more, like, witty and maybe more funny, toying with his victims in the later movies. But just in this one, I think I was expecting him to be funny. Like, I think I was expecting him to be, like, over-the-top campy, like, this isn't scary. And then he kind of, like, walked the line of scary and funny. Like, I don't know, I just thought it was an interesting balance, and it worked for the movie. I was just wondering what you guys thought.
I don't really remember him being funny.
I guess funny's not really the word, but, like when he, like, chopped off his fingers and, like, the green ooze just, like, squirted out. Like, it wasn't...
Oh, yeah. I guess I really enjoyed, again, because it's a dream, he can be and do anything.
Yeah.
Like, when Tina ripped his face off and he was a skull, I enjoyed that. And this actually is a nice segue into high points of the movie for you. Do you guys mind if I tell you my high point?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move along.
My high point had to be when Freddy is confronting her in an alley and all of a sudden his arms grow to be 20 feet long, because that was the first time I realized how they were going to live in this dream world where the rules don't exist, and things like that actually happen in your dreams. Things are disproportionate sizes based on importance, and things change so quickly and so weirdly that I just, first of all, it was hilarious to see. Honestly, he looked ridiculous with those arms, but it also just made me kind of change my perception of how this is going to happen. I really started to realize that this is going to be totally nut bar. Anything can happen. The rules don't matter. And then I started to really get into the movie. So that was my high point.
Awesome.
I do love that scene. Like you were saying, it just looks so funny because Robert Englund, who plays Freddy Krueger, is actually kind of like a shorter guy. Like he's not super tall. And a lot of these killers in these movies are like giant. Like Kane Hodder, who plays Jason in a lot of the Friday the 13th sequels, is like 6'6" or something like that. Sorry, Jackie, don't laugh at me that I know these things.
I just love that you know all of their names off by heart. Even Nancy, you knew her last name and the actress who played her. Is just blowing my mind.
But anyway, Robert Englund is kind of shorter, so when he is Freddy sometimes in these scenes, like it looks kind of funny. Like he's got those huge long arms, but he's not like a big scary man. He's like a regular guy you would pass, but now he's got these massive arms and he's running at you.
He runs so funny too, like bow-legged and like, look at my long arms.
But that's a good point, Jackie. Like I don't think no, sorry. I was gonna say that's a good point, Jackie, that dream logic doesn't mean any, or nothing means anything in dream world, and I don't think I had really looked at it from that perspective, and that really does make me like Freddy a lot more. And like I said, like it was a good mix for me of kind of camp and actual scary, so I liked it.
Yeah, and it seems like they hit on a lot of things that happen in a lot of people's dreams, like really recurring things: drowning, quicksand, being unable to move, paralyzed. Like a lot of these were very relatable to dreams that I've had before, which I could see how if I was watching this as a child would scare the crap out of me, because I've definitely had these dreams before. Now I can just appreciate them for what they were.
Yeah, I just on that point I wanted to add Wes Craven actually. I forget what it is. I think he's got like a degree in philosophy, or no, a degree in psychology and a master's in philosophy. So like he does have a lot of background in how people think, and that's kind of, I think, really helpful for him when it comes to crafting horror movies. He knows what scares you and how to really get in your mind that way.
It definitely did. I definitely appreciated the level of this movie, which sounds weird because it's an 80s campy horror, but it seemed a lot smarter than I was expecting.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think that's actually kind of my high point, if we're doing that. Just that I think I came in expecting it to be sillier than it was, and it was really good. Like, there's a lot more to it than just kills. It's not, I mean, I guess it is a slasher movie, but I wouldn't really consider it in the same vein as Halloween or even Friday the 13th. It's very unique and very, I don't know, it's fun to watch, and definitely has some spooks.
Yeah,
Jen, what's your high point aside from everything?
My high point, so we kind of touched on it already, but the part with Tina and the body bag is so creepy and so well done, and it's one of the most lasting images for me, so that's definitely, I'd say, probably the best scene. Glenn's death is also an all-time favorite just because it's hilarious. But just to add, my high point right now is the fact that you guys seem to actually like this movie. I was so sure you were going to hate it, but you're saying such positive things. I'm so happy.
So far you win. This is the first one where we're all in agreement.
Yeah, I thought I was going to hate it. I thought I was going to hate it with every fiber of my being.
Oh my god, you guys are horror fans now. Welcome. Enjoy.
Yeah, no. Do not make me watch any more of these movies because they will not all be this positive.
So what about low points, Jackie?
It's hard to really pick a low point because I just accepted this movie for what it was and enjoyed it. But I think Rod is my low point. The whole beginning with Rod, it felt really awkward and terrible, but it made me worried that it was what people had to deal with in high school in the 80s with being pressured and forced and not listened to, and how little autonomy Tina had. It made me more sad because I think that's probably how it was, which is gross, terrible.
Yeah.
And Rod sucked. He was just totally a dick. He just sucked. Everything he did was terrible.
He was bad. Yeah, my low point, although that's a very good low point. I think the thing that jumped out at me the most is overall I really did like Nancy, and I thought she was a really great main character and final girl, as you mentioned. But some of her acting, I think it crossed the line into just bad acting territory. And to be fair, I think I was expecting more bad acting. And for most of it, I was giving her the benefit of the doubt. And but there were just like a few times where I think it just kind of crossed into bad acting territory, mostly with like when she woke up from her dream in English class and she was just kind of like, oh, it's fine. Like it was just a really weird reaction of just being confused. And when she found the body and just like no reaction, or when she got sucked in the bathtub and then her mom barged in and she just had no reaction. And so I would have liked a little more from that, but
I have to say, just quickly, you made me remember one thing. Another low point is when she puts her robe on while soaking wet. I wrote that down. I like, is that how people wear robes? They immediately get out of a tub and put a robe on? Because it just is so uncomfortable in my mind to imagine doing that. So when it happened, I completely exited the movie and I just felt clammy and I was like, ew, dry off first. So yeah, it wasn't a low point, but it was a confusing moment.
I love that these are the details that you pick up on Jackie. Like, it's always these things I would never even notice, but you're just like, that must feel weird. And I'm like, oh yeah, who would do that? That is weird.
It is funny how we all have very different things we notice in movies. Like, very, very varied perspectives.
What about you, Jen? Do you have any low points?
I would say, I don't want to say that this is a low point necessarily, but watching this kind of on its own for this podcast before I rewatched the rest of the series kind of as a standalone, I just felt like wasn't really getting the full experience of Freddy. Like, he hadn't got really funny yet, but I also felt, yeah, he was scary, but then with the Home Alone traps, where she pulls him into the real world, he's kind of like bumbling around, getting set on fire and stuff. So I felt like he wasn't scary enough there, but he wasn't fun and campy enough like he becomes later. So I just felt like that scene kind of where she's pulling him into the real world, I felt like I would have liked that played a little differently. But that's me watching it with like knowledge of what happens later in the series too, and kind of applying that to it. So
right,
yeah, I guess if I had to pick a low point.
So Jackie, did you pull any quotes from this movie that jumped out at you?
I had a couple, but I'm sure you guys have better ones. The first quote was, "Up yours with a twirling lawnmower," from Rod. We are introduced to Rod with this. He molests Tina. At this point, we didn't even know that they had been or were dating. So he just seems like a creepy high school dude who's feeling her up. She pretty clearly tells him to back off, and he immediately tells her, "Up yours with a twirling lawnmower." So Rod sucks. Thanks, Rod. You're the worst. The only other quotes I have was, "Oh my God, I look 20 years old."
I wrote that down too.
Oh God, that was a slap in the face. Also, they were supposed to be 15. I only figured that out halfway through the movie. But I was like, these are some crazy ass 15-year-old, sex hungry, drug, rock and roll party kids. Maybe they should be more chill. And then the only other quote I have is when she realizes that Glenn did not wake her up. She says, "Glenn, you bastard," which made me laugh because I literally had written, "Glenn, you dick," as she was saying it. So am I Nancy? I don't know. Maybe. I might be Nancy. And that's all I got.
What was the one that I liked? I had all of those, and then there was one that I forgot to write down, so I don't want to misquote it, but it's when she's in the creepy Tina body bag dream, and then there's like that hall monitor, and she was like, "Where's your hall pass?" And she's like, "Screw your pass," or whatever.
Yeah, that's good. And then she like turns back and the hall monitor's like turning into Freddy.
Yeah,
that was creepy.
I'm sorry, I'm sure I just misquoted that. I don't remember the exact phrase, but
no, that sounds right.
Yeah, I think that's close. The only other quote I wrote down, I think you mentioned earlier, was when the phone turns into the Freddy tongue and it's like, "I'm your boyfriend now."
Oh, that was creepy. Yeah. So unexpected. And like because it's not CGI, it's so real and visceral and gross as hell, man. Definitely
That's a
gross.
Good point though. I feel like the special effects in general are good because they're practical effects, with the exception of him turning into dust or whatever at the end. That really jumped out as being weird. But like, just as a general rule, like practical effects look so much better than CGI. Like that the movie holds up because the effects are primarily practical.
So fun fact, I don't want to jump on Austin's trivia like toes.
I mostly am leaving trivia to you, but yes.
Oh, good. I can go for days. But as we were talking about effects, the actress who plays Nancy, Heather Langenkamp, she and her husband actually work in a special effects company now, and they provided some of the effects for the movie Cabin in the Woods, which is another one of my favorite horror movies. That's like a fun little horror connection that they kind of went into the industry in another way. You see a bit of that in the film Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which is... Sorry. I just keep seeing Jackie's face, like, what are you talking about?
I've never seen any of these movies.
So, New Nightmare is the other one I would recommend you guys watch. Dream Warriors is a sequel. New Nightmare is the last of the kind of Freddy movies. And it's after all of the sequels. And it's actually like a meta movie. So the actors are playing themselves being haunted in the real world by the real kind of Freddy Krueger, quote unquote. So again, it's very Scream 3, where the actors who stab are getting killed. Yeah, so this predates that. And again, Wes Craven, just using his ideas again in the Scream series.
Yeah.
But New Nightmare is actually really great. So, like, Heather Langenkamp plays herself. And the guy who plays her dad, John Saxon, who's also in Black Christmas, which is another horror movie I'm going to make you guys watch, he plays, like, himself. And Wes Craven plays himself. So there's a lot of kind of tie-ins. But anyway, in that movie, you see her and her husband working on, like, special effects and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Ties in. Watch that movie. Jackie, stop looking at me like that.
Sorry, it was just a lot of information, and I don't understand any of it. Someday, after we do this podcast for a while, maybe I'll understand what you just said.
Does anyone want to take a guess at how many gallons of fake blood was used on this movie?
Wow.
Great question.
My guess is 30.
57.
Guys, we are proving once again that we are terrible with numbers.
Damn it.
How many?
100? 105.
Okay, Jen?
314.
Over 500, apparently.
Oh my god!
How much of that was just for Glenn?
Sorry, I was going to say I only remember Glenn's blood geyser, but I guess Tina was quite bloody as well.
Yeah.
Most of it was probably on Glenn, but still.
I know for Glenn's death scene, I think you can kind of tell it's obviously like rigged, so it's upside down, so the bed is like on the ceiling and they're pouring the blood down. So they probably had to do a few takes of that, maybe.
Yeah. I was actually wondering if that was how Tina's was done too, but in terms of, because she was like being dragged along the ceiling and stuff. I don't know, maybe she was just on wires, but I was just wondering if that was a similar effect.
I don't remember. I know Jackie's gonna laugh at me again. There is a documentary that goes through the making of all of the Nightmare on Elm Street series.
I was going to watch it, so that makes me feel better.
Yeah, it is called Never Sleep Again. It is between 4 and 5 hours long. I have seen it, so I know that it probably does explain that, but I just don't remember because I watched it a few years ago and it's not super fresh. The face Jackie is making.
4 to 5 hours?
Because it goes through
and you watched this?
Of all the movies. So there's like 7, maybe 8. I don't remember if they go into Freddy versus Jason. 7 or 8 movies that they have to go through with a couple hours devoted to each. So yeah, it's long.
Jesus, you did not pay me to watch this. Sounds awful. I can barely watch the movie, let alone the making of the movie you can barely watch.
So yeah, I in general feel silly reading trivia for this movie, considering how well Jen knows it, and also just because it's such an iconic movie that I'm pretty sure everyone knows things about it. But just basic stuff. The budget, it was $1.8 million to make, and then
that's so cute.
Yeah, and then
what a tiny little budget.
The gross USA, it made $25.5 million. So,
wow.
It did pretty good.
Yeah, it was a hit.
And then the two things that I wanted to talk about in terms of trivia, I went down some weird rabbit holes that were only tangentially related to the movie. But so I usually start on the IMDb trivia page, and then if things strike my fancy, I'll go into a deeper dive. But the thing that jumped out at me is, I guess there's a lot of different stories about what inspired Wes Craven to make this movie. But one thing that popped up was he was inspired by the story of a group of Southeast Asian refugees who all died while asleep, basically in the throes of a nightmare. And so I looked into this, and it's called sudden unexpected nocturnal death syndrome. And it's a real thing. And it basically is a really serious sleep disorder because it affects otherwise healthy people. And strangely, it primarily affects young Asian men. And it's basically just, I don't know what the exact cause of death is. I don't know what technically would be like written on the death certificates, but essentially these healthy men go to sleep and just die. And it was first recognized in 1915 in the Philippines, and a bunch of other Asian countries have recognized it. They all have names for it that are a little bit, variants of like sleep death. And it was identified in the US in 1975 in Southeast Asian male refugees, and it was the main cause of death among these male refugees in the early 80s. So
weird.
Wow.
Right?
Are we sure that Freddy Krueger is not real? Maybe they brought him with them from the Philippines?
Yeah. So
I
that
mean,
was
he might be real.
I mean, there's no proof that he's not real.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who's to say he's not? Then the other thing, and I feel kind of stupid for this, but I feel like I have to address it because I did my undergrad at the SUNY Potsdam in Potsdam, New York, and Wes Craven used to teach at Clarkson University, which is also in Potsdam, New York. So he taught there, I think, in the late 60s. And so there's a lot of like local lore, obviously. I'm sure, first of all, that like any city or any town that has an Elm Street is like, we're the original Elm Street. But I legitimately thought it was Potsdam. There was a house on Elm Street in Potsdam that was always referred to as the Nightmare on Elm Street house. It was torn down in 2010, and there were like protests about it. And so I always just kind of took it for granted. I was like, oh yeah, he taught here. It was based on this. It doesn't seem like it actually was, but there was one of his when he was a professor at Clarkson, I guess a group of his students made a student film in 1968 that parodied horror movies, and it was shot along Elm Street in Potsdam. So that might be where the kind of confusion comes from. But
he stole their movie and made millions off of it. Uncool, Wes Craven. Actually, wait, double millions because he recycled it into the Scream franchise. Wow.
So
I guess we hate Wes Craven now.
But that was, I guess, well, I don't know. There's still a lot of, it still pops up as trivia that like it has ties to Potsdam, New York. So maybe he does, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting, little personal connection.
As Freddy Krueger says in one of the later films, every town has an Elm Street.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's true.
Well, and I was confused because they always referred to this house on Elm Street as the Nightmare on Elm Street house because supposedly it had inspired the look of the house for the film. And I was looking at it, and it was an old fraternity house, and it looks nothing like Nancy's house in this movie. So I don't know why. I don't know. Local lore, I guess, but still a connection. Like, he did teach in Potsdam, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Jen, do you have any trivia to tell us? Anything that you remembered?
Sure. So one thing that I actually noticed during this rewatch is that the actress who plays Nancy's teacher in the classroom scene.
Oh, sorry.
What were you going to say, Jackie?
No, I just smashed into my closet door with excitement because I wanted to say I recognized her, but I didn't know where from, and I was hoping you would tell me because I forgot to Google it.
She is Lynn Shay. She's a horror actress who's pretty well known. She's in the Insidious movies as kind of the psychic medium. But her brother, Robert Shay, is actually the producer on the Nightmare on Elm Street films. So, and he made New Line Cinema. So New Line Cinema was kind of a distribution company, and then Nightmare on Elm Street was the first film that they produced. So they kind of call themselves the house that Freddy built, quote unquote, because it's kind of the Freddy series is what made them a profitable Hollywood production studio. And Bob Shay is kind of the driving force behind that. And then, so his sister's in the movie. She also appears in one of the later movies, again, in a really small role. But I just thought it was a cool little connection, and it's another little horror universe tie. Again, Jackie's like shaking your head. Like, who are these people?
I just can't believe you know all this. You know their names. You know her name. You know her brother's name. It's just crazy. It's impressive. But also, it's funny because the teacher is like the only good actor. And she has one line. She just looks shaken. And I was like, ooh, acting and emotion.
I'm also guessing that Jackie does not recognize her from Insidious. Just a hazard guess.
I'm looking up to see if I can see what you would recognize her from, if there's any non-horror film that she's been in.
Yeah, I've never seen Insidious. She seems like a mom type, though. Some mom character. But, like, in a comedy, that's where I feel like I know her from.
She was in There's Something About Mary.
No.
Detroit Rock City, Boat Trip.
Oh, it's probably Detroit Rock City.
A Cinderella
She's like-
Story. Is that something you've seen?
A classic.
No. Well, no, it's about boxing, but no.
Yeah. So
I
yeah,
think it's Detroit Rock City.
Yeah, she's one of those actresses who's been around for a really long time in a lot of small roles, but kind of recently with the Insidious movies, she had like a resurgence, I guess.
Sure. Good for her. She deserves it.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure she got, like, her arms chopped off and then her bile duct eaten by a demon or something, right? So, not great, but good for her.
Yeah, I'm sure that's actually what happens in Insidious.
How would I know? It sounds insidious enough.
I'm gonna make you watch those.
Oh, God, please no.
I guess the only other piece of kind of trivia that I have is that in the initial scripts of the film, Freddy Krueger was a child molester, not just a child murderer. So that's kind of why sometimes he's a little sexual, like with the tongue and the "I'm your boyfriend, Nancy" and things like that. He's kind of aggressively sexual towards them because that's from that original version of the script. But one of the reasons they had to change it and make him the much less scary child murderer is in the early 80s, it was kind of the beginnings of the satanic panic, and a lot of people were worried about child molesters everywhere coming after their kids. So they were really
stranger danger.
Yeah, they were really worried that people were going to react really negatively to this film about a child molester. So they were like, okay, he doesn't molest the kids, he just murders them, and that's fine? Question mark.
It's really funny that you say that, because the way Nancy's mom tells her about Freddy's real life activities, the way it's phrased, I was expecting her to say child molester. Maybe it's just that child molester, those words go together more than child murderer, and you just expect that to be the next thing. But I was expecting her to say molester, and when she said murderer, I was like, oh, okay. And then I didn't really think it, but I was like, that's not as bad.
Yeah, so
he just murdered them.
Yeah, so in all the movies, he's a child murderer and not a molester. But apparently in the remake, which I never watched because I don't believe in shitty horror remakes, in that one, they make him a child molester. And I think they make it so that Nancy and the Elm Street children are survivors, people that he had molested. But they have repressed the memories or something.
Ooh, I don't like that. I like this one better. Let's not.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not sure how that would go.
No, that's awkward.
Yeah.
I kind of love the parents vigilanteing his ass, though.
I mean, it didn't work out for them.
I know. They should be rewarded, not punished. They should have been like, yeah. Although they did murder him in a really terrible way.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not 100% on their side, but I get it. He killed 20 kids. That's crazy. But anyway, that's just a side note.
So can you imagine being 15 and finding out your mom burnt a man alive?
Although, they skate past the 20 children. How? Yeah. He's not just I hit a kid with my car by accident and then they vigilante him. He is a serious predator that the police were not stopping, so...
And he got off because of a search warrant? I feel like there was probably more to it. But
then also, was Nancy's dad still a cop at that time? Was he part of the reason why this didn't go so well? And he was like, I gotta cover up my mistakes. Come on, honey, get in the car, grab some gasoline.
Interesting.
Very interesting. He was a shitty guy. Man, that dad sucked. The first thing that happened in the movie is that after they find Tina's body and they're at the police station, he comes in and he rubs Nancy's head, and I didn't know he was her father. And I was like, this cop is real touchy. Excuse me, is this just the 80s? Because that doesn't seem right. And then it ended up being her dad. So I forgot about that.
Fair.
It's fine. It's fine.
That's hilarious.
Also, this is just another side note. I'm remembering things now. But when the sheet first is snaking up Rod's body, I thought Freddy was molesting him.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I thought that was a sexual thing. And then instead he got murdered. However, I also think that Rod could have survived that. If I don't really want him to. Rod sucks. But he was only suffocated for 10 seconds. I think if they CPR'd him, he would have been fine. That's my commentary. The end. So yeah, okay, now that you pointed out, I see some aggressive sexual stuff from Freddy that I really didn't put together. And it all makes a disgusting kind of sense. So
yeah, that's true.
Thank you for putting that into my brain.
I'm sorry. No, he's not a molester. He just, murders kids. That's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
He
It's
just
okay.
molests you in your dreams when you're an adult, so it's different. It's
Yeah,
more
exactly.
okay.
When you're a 15-year-old adult.
Ooh, yeah, they're 15. I forgot again. God, that's gross. Do you know the ages of any of these actors at the time that the movie was filmed? Because they had to be in their 20s, right?
Well, I read that she was like 20 when the film came out, which is why that, oh God, I look 20 years old line is even funnier.
That is funny. Ron had to be like 38, right? He looked rough.
Sometimes with like 70s and 80s movies, it's hard to tell because they look so old, but they're teenagers. Because it's just like the way people styled back then, the way people lived. I don't know.
Are they 40? Are they 16? Who knows?
Yeah. You're like, who is this teacher? Oh no, that is the 15-year-old student in the scene.
Can we talk about the giantness of Nancy's hair?
Yeah.
How did they make it so big? Literally, at one point, she's walking in a dream, and she's a stick with a triangle of hair, and I was very confused. Also, that bothers me about every movie where they have to escape things or run or do anything physical, and they have all that hair. I'm like, where's the elastic band around your wrist that if you really had that much hair, you would tie that shit back?
True.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
You can cut that point. You can cut everything I said so far. I'm a garbage person.
You can cut the whole podcast.
Yeah. Can you just cut my life? Thank you. Great.
Yeah, just delete all of the tracks.
Just cancel me in general, please. I do have one more quote that I forgot when I was like, damn, this cop is super insensitive. Yeah. He's walking past a group of people and he's like, you don't need a stretcher, you need a mop. I was like, dude, save that commentary until you're inside surrounded by cops. Like, these people walking down the street are literally his friends and neighbors. You don't really need to say that.
So, Jen, do you have any other movies that came out in 1984 that maybe we would have seen?
Yeah, so obviously in 1984, I would have, if I was alive, been watching Nightmare on Elm Street. But these are the movies that I assume you guys probably would have been watching. Jackie, something called Beverly Hills Cop.
Okay, I wasn't old enough to watch movies at this point, but yes, I've seen Beverly Hills Cop about 100 times, and it's amazing.
Yeah, that's a Jackie movie if there ever was one. Also, this was actually a pretty good year for movies. There was The Terminator,
amazing.
Ghostbusters, Gremlins, which you guys aren't on board with, but I will make you. Karate Kid came out that year. Karate Kid fans,
Ralph, not you.
And then 16 Candles were kind of in pure, like, John Hughes territory.
This was a really, really solid year for movies.
I haven't seen any of those movies.
Pretty good. Oh my God, Austin.
Not even... You haven't seen any of those?
I haven't seen any of those.
You haven't seen Terminator?
No.
You haven't seen Ghostbusters?
Oh, sorry, that's not true. I have seen Ghostbusters.
You haven't seen 16 Candles?
No.
Oh, it's hard to watch now.
Yeah, I don't really want to at this point.
So, hold on. You haven't seen Terminator. So you haven't seen Terminator 2 Judgment Day?
No, it's on our list.
Have you seen T3? Have you seen Terminator 4 Rise of the Machines?
Yeah, Terminator Salvation, Terminator Genesis. What are we talking about?
Have you seen the Sarah Connor Chronicles TV show?
I'm pretty sure that the only Terminator I have seen is the show at Universal Studios. So that's all.
T2 is such a classic. It's so good. Oh, okay. We got to redo the list again because I can't believe it.
It's on the list. It's on the list.
Yeah, but we have to add all of the year 1984 to the list because a lot of stuff happened.
Yeah, there's some good movies in 84, including this one. What's your ratings?
Whew, okay, so I'll go first, I guess. My enjoyment of this movie, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. I enjoyed this. I think I went in with really negative ideas and I was expecting to hate it and I was expecting to be scared and uncomfortable and grossed out by gore. And so it ended up being great. It ended up being an 80s homage of like silly weirdness. Some of it was creepy. It was very atmospheric. I liked the character. It felt like an early swing for feminism. So I'm in. So I really enjoyed it. A lot more than I was expecting. Like times 10. And then on production value, we had talked about how the practical effects really give it a really real, good feel. I would give it a solid 9 for quality because they did some really interesting things for the 80s that were beyond what I was expecting. Like what's jumping out at me right now is that dragged through the tub underwater ice kind of feeling, and that really creeped me out. And I really respect how they were able to make dreams that I've had so real on a screen, and the remembered terror came through for me. So I really thought it was well done.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like my ratings are similar. I think for enjoyment, I'd probably give it, the same, about 8.5, 8.5. It was a lot of fun. It was good scary. It was a good level of gore for me. It was a well-made movie. I think it was similar to Jackie. I think I went in thinking it was going to be worse than it was in terms of just like not being as good of a movie as it was. I don't think I was expecting it to be scary. I don't think I went in expecting to actually be scared by it, but I think I was expecting it to be more poorly made and with worse acting and just like unenjoyable in a lot of ways, but it wasn't. So I think for enjoyment, 8.5. For quality, similar. I'll give it an 8. I think there's a few things that kind of just that last moment when he's like in the real world and just crumbles to dust, I feel like that takes it down a notch because it just kind of comes out of nowhere. So I'll say 8 for quality, but it was really, really good.
My heart is so happy right now that you guys both have rated this so highly. I'm like, I can't believe it. I feel so honored. So enjoyment of this movie, I'm going to give a 10 out of 10. I've seen it 100 times. I will see it 100 more. Quality, that's a really hard one because I think for the time in 1984, it actually was doing a lot of really cool, innovative things. There was a lot of great effects. It's really like a good looking movie for the time, and it holds up kind of differently now just because we're used to kind of a different standard. But overall, I don't know. I'll say like I give it a 9, maybe a 9.5 out of 10 quality wise. Like I think it's good. It's a good movie.
Yeah, it does hold up well. Like I was very impressed at how well it held up.
I agree. And it's really difficult stuff to bring out of a dream into reality, right? The idea of making you feel like you're in a dream could be very, very complicated. And I think they did it really well.
Yeah, like making a dream realistic, essentially, which is
yeah, and all those things that you're used to happening in dreams happen on film. It's hard to do that. I can't imagine how I would try and put one of my dreams and the feeling of being in a dream onto a movie. Sounds crazy, but they did a good job. This is insane. We all like this movie. That never happened.
Oh, happy.
I'm glad I watched it, which I really didn't expect to be saying. Like I thought I would have hated you forever, but I don't.
I think what we've learned from this is that I have amazing taste in movies.
No,
and you guys should just
I do not
watch my picks.
Disagree.
But yeah, so I guess I think that's about it. We got. Anyone have any last final points?
No, I think that's a wrap.
All right, so thanks so much for listening. And next week, we're going to be talking about The Rock, Jackie's pick. It's going to be super exciting. You can follow us on Twitter at I Hate Your Taste and on Instagram at Hate Your Taste Pod. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.